Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's Security Roundtable. Quick couple items before we get started here. We will be recording this session for future reference, as well as if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat box or the question and answer panel in Zoom, and we'll get to them as we go on throughout. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to our first panelist today, who's going to pass it around to each other panelist to give introductions. Without further ado, Tim, take it away.
Hi, my name is Tim Richter from RCOR Technologies, and I'm located in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. Adam?
Hello, this is Adam Bell. I'm with Sublime Computer Services, and we're located in Nashville, Tennessee. Kevin?
Kevin Landers with Fully Involved Solutions, and we are in God's country, Charleston, South Carolina. Peter?
I was waiting.
Left him hanging.
Peter Nicolaitis. I'm an information security consultant, own and operate Paradigm Consulting Company, and I'm also acting as a senior security analyst for Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. And that would lead us on to, what, back to Tim? No, to Brian.
I am Brian Lashpell with B4 Networks, based out of Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, and I'm owner of the company. Bill?
Hello, and I am Bill Wright with WCI Technology Solutions in Columbus, Ohio.
Yep. Back to you, Tim.
Okay. I think we're going to start out with, I'd like to give a quick recap of some security issues that were big news in 2016, and then we can kind of go around and talk about some of the things that we can expect in 2017. To me, by far, the biggest security issue that was in the news in 2016 would be the results of ransomware. It, over the years, has evolved from a couple of youth in a garage holding data hostage to a multi-billion-dollar industry that's so prevalent that governments are warning businesses to boost their security and institute multiple layers of protection against it, which is kind of unheard of, that the government's actually coming out to us and saying, hey, protect the businesses that you work with. Worse, I think there's no end in sight with it. It's just a matter of protecting against it. Right behind that would be to me, government-sponsored hacking and spyware. The biggest news would be surrounding the potential Russian support of hackers breaking into the Democratic Party computers. Runners-up in 2016, U.S. Department of Justice being hacked, and over 10,000 Department of Homeland Security employees and 20,000 FBI employees and contractors had information like Social Security numbers published on the internet in October. Yahoo, over the years now, they've announced that they've suffered multiple breaches of account information. And finally, in June, the hacker called Peace compromised 167 million LinkedIn users and 71 million Twitter users. Many of the accounts were celebrities like Katy Perry and business owners. Even Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook and Twitter co-founder Biz Stone's accounts were compromised. So 2016 has been really busy for hackers and for security breaches, and I think that it's going to be really nice for us to kind of chat together and hopefully help businesses become more aware of how to protect themselves in 2017. Clayton, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so here's the first question we have that I want the group to tackle. And let's start with you, Tim, and get your thoughts on this. What do you see as the biggest security threat in 2017?
I'm still going to go with ransomware being the biggest security threat. I think two features of ransomware are going to be real prevalent. The first is the very first ransomware that actually takes files away and pulls them into and gives them to the hacker prior to encrypting them, and then them going and trying to use the information in it to ransom other people in other ways. Now, this is a big game changer because medical practices and other practices that deal with PCI compliance and any compliance, to have the information taken is a complete breach of the security, and it's going to be a big issue because you're going to see a lot more security breach notifications, and those can actually take down businesses. The other thing that I think is really interesting about ransomware is a new popcorn ransomware, which is you don't have to pay if you help infect a couple of other people. And I think that all of us have very, very good intentions, but heck, if I don't have to pay $3,000, as a business owner, how's that going to help? So to me, ransomware, and those are the two big reasons.
Fantastic. Adam, what are your thoughts?
So Tim hit on the popcorn ransomware, which was what I was going to bring up, in that, it's not going to be IT professionals like us that are going to, essentially throw that to somebody else, just because, we wouldn't do that. But there are people who are not professionals who aren't nearly as ethical, and they're going to throw those things off on somebody else. And, that's just going to happen. And that's awful. And like Tim said, with them capturing the data, Tim, you may have been the one who told me about it, they would send the data, or they'd steal all your data, and then they would hold the data ransom. And you have to pay them each year to not release the data.
Oh, ransomware as a
right
service. There. It's a subscription model.
Yes. RAAS.
Awesome.
Excellent. So next we'll go to Kevin, and then after Kevin, we'll go to Bill.
Sure. So on my side, I think one of the things that the other flavors that we're seeing hasn't been as prevalent, because some of those that have come out have ended up being duds, but Jigsaw was a big one last year that we saw. Name of a ransomware, all these things get their own names, but Jigsaw's method of operation was that for every hour you didn't pay the ransom, they'd start deleting files. And if you rebooted your computer, they claimed that they would, delete 1,000 files upon a reboot. So it's not only a question of can you get the data unencrypted, it's also, hey, are they going to delete the files? And then, like Adam mentioned, basically, are they going to take them off site and then hold them really for ransom and not let you have them? But yeah, Jigsaw was kind of an interesting one. I know it ended up having some issues where it didn't actually carry out on its threat, but the idea that suddenly your data starts getting deleted, the biggest thing you need to know and make sure of with regards to any of this is that you have backups, because even if they start not doing the ransomware thing, but removing the files and then deleting them from the systems, backups are the only way you're going to get that stuff back if you don't pay the ransom.
Okay, when I saw that, we kind of started talking about this, I took a little bit of a different approach of it. I started thinking about how are these attacks going to get into an organization, and I started thinking about the new Internet of Things. So you have all of these new devices that are coming up with IP addresses, and there's no way to really protect them themselves from the attacks. So, while I think ransomware is kind of here to stay because of that financial gain that can be, gained from holding somebody's data hostage, I think it's going to be very important to look at how do these threats get into an organization from the beginning. So I think 2017 is going to be two things. It's going to be a year of creativity. I think we're seeing that the people writing these threats and making these attacks are getting very creative in how they're going about doing it. And that ties into the Internet of Things. What device can we find a weakness in to find our way in to then infiltrate? Because we're moving away from protecting the perimeter of an organization to how do we protect all of these endpoints that everybody's bringing to work. And so I think that's the thing that we're going to see change a lot in 2017. And so I'm throwing out the term of Internet of Things. People's refrigerators are attached to the internet, drones. You've got all kinds of devices that are just attaching to the internet to make connections. Your Kindle, you've got all these things. So when I talk about that, I'm just talking about something that has an IP address. Your thermostat, your watch, your Apple Watch, your Fitbit, all stuff like that.
Fantastic, fantastic. So let's move on to the second question, and this is going to be a three-part question. So the first we're going to talk about workstations. So what tools do you use on workstations, or what softwares do you use in your fight against hackers and security threats? Let's go with someone who we haven't heard from yet.
I can take
Let's
that
go
one
with
for starters.
Peter. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
So traditional antivirus, my colleagues have been saying now for over a decade that antivirus is dead. And I have been saying that whenever I hear one of my colleagues start off with a proclamation that a technology, usually a security technology, is dead, I want to punch them in the mouth, because it makes my clients say, oh, well, we don't need that anymore. And what they really are trying to say when they say antivirus is dead is antivirus alone is dead. Meaning that antivirus by itself is not going to keep you safe. And that is true. Most threats that we're facing today walk around antivirus with their eyes closed. It's not challenging at all. And by antivirus, I'm talking about traditional signature-based AV. Similarly, we hear, just having a regular old firewall is not enough, and it's not. So what we do whenever we set up with a new security engagement, we have a multiple layer defense. And it starts with the user education. We have to teach these people what scams look like, what appropriate behavior is, what's inappropriate behavior. And that's really the biggest challenge that we're facing, is people want to come to the office with their iPads. They want to be able to surf personal things and get their own personal Gmail and Yahoo, and basically bypass corporate controls. So we do our best to enable these and say, hey, you want to bring your own device to the company? That's wonderful. It can only have internet access. It can't actually access corporate systems. If it does, it has to go through a controlled environment to get there, just as if it was outside, like if you were accessing from home. On the desktops, we do have traditional antivirus, because dead as it may be, it still catches quite a lot of stuff, but it's not catching the latest cutting edge, bleeding edge threats. For that, we use something what's now known as next generation antivirus. Examples of that would be the Sophos Intercept X product or Cylance. And we're having really good luck with those. They do take some time to set up, though. So there is an initial investment that some clients are not willing to take. These are things you can't just turn on and say, okay, you're secure. There's a learning curve, and it's the software that needs to be learning. So on top of this, we always put in standard firewalls. We put in smart next generation firewalls, which not just they don't just look at where traffic is coming from or going to. They also examine the traffic and see if it looks malicious or suspicious, and block it or allow it accordingly. And then finally, two more things. We do data loss prevention technologies, so that if you accidentally or purposefully try to take confidential information out of the site, you're not allowed to, if this is appropriate to your environment. And finally, we do employ hard drive encryption on all workstations, portable devices, so that when they get lost or stolen, the data that's on there is safe. Adam, what do you do?
Well, I want to get Kevin to call in here, but do the same thing. So, we've got an antivirus client on there. Like, there's not a big difference between all of them. There is difference between different tools, but we work on the antivirus with the standard signatures, and then we also stick to the web filtering, which helps keep the junk out before it ever gets in. Also with the the Sophos, like a UTM, it's going to block a lot of that garbage before getting in. We like the web filtering, like OpenDNS and that kind of thing, to travel with the user, so that's the filtering happens wherever they are. And then, so Kevin, I wanted to get you to talk about Carver, which is very much like Cylance that Peter talked about, which kind of sits beside the traditional antivirus, doing a little more. Kevin?
Well, it does. Sure. So we do, like Adam just described, we do everything that we can at the firewall level. On the workstation level, again, just as Peter said, it's all about layers. So we do have web filtering on the workstation level. We do have a primary antivirus product. It's not a next-gen antivirus, but it runs in real time. We have a malware protection piece of software that runs in real time beside it. Periodically through the day, we run a second antivirus product just to see if anything slipped through the cracks. What we've been moving towards is we are moving towards an offering through Carver that provides us with something that's more behavioral. Peter could probably go at length and big words for us on this one, but in short, it's basically looking at activity, and it's gives us the ability to see, not only detect bad things, but potentially stop them, roll things back, like roll data changes back on encryption. So if you got ransomware, what would it do? It would detect the ransomware activity, it'd stop it. It would basically log all the activity that started it. How did this process begin? Where did the infection start from? It ties into the workstation in such a way that it can roll the changes back, so it'll unencrypt the documents. But then it also gives us forensic information that allows us to tell someone whether or not data actually left their network, which is huge. Just about every state, I'd be surprised if there's one that doesn't have a breach notification law. You need to be able to know whether or not data left your network or not. Whether there's a rule that says you have to report it or not, you as a business owner, as a company of any type, you need to know whether or not the data actually left. They give us that information as well. The nice thing about it with the way that we work with Carver is we also my team is not left to figure it all out on their own. We actually have, a working relationship with their network security team, so that, we can tap them in whenever we see an incident or they see an incident that we didn't recognize, and work hand in hand to put it back and to give company, a business owner, some peace of mind of exactly what happened and figure it out. Was there anything more specific, Adam, you want me to talk about with that?
No, that was mainly just the difference between the regular antivirus that a user can buy and just say, don't I have that? No, you don't have that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to interject a little bit here real quick. I think, we've heard a couple of terms here. Peter was talking about signature-based antivirus. That one, it's been around for forever, and it's kind of easy to understand. It's basically the antivirus looks at the file, it goes out to a database, it compares it. Is there a match? Yes, bingo, it blocks it. Behavioral is really the next generation, and I wanted to kind of give a really easy explanation or an example of what that means. If anyone has kids, this is really going to hit home. But so you're sitting in the living room, and Billy comes up to you and says, "Hey, Dad, can I have a cookie?" Now that behavior by itself, that's not a bad behavior. Correct. But now Billy,
if he's overweight and really needs to be losing,
maybe
it could be a bad behavior.
So now you say, "Billy, no, you can't have a cookie," and then Billy kind of starts walking off to the kitchen. Does that behavior look like you might want to check into it? Yes. So that's that behavior that the new generation systems are starting to look at. What is it that this program's doing? Do we know that this is a good program? Nope. Okay, I'm going to monitor it for a while. And it kind of watches what's happening in the background. And then if it sees something it doesn't like, it blocks it, keeps it from going everywhere else, and reverses what it's done.
Yep. So. Another good example would be, you say you allow your mailman access to, let's say if you live in a condominium or an apartment complex, it's perfectly acceptable for the mailman to walk in and access all the mailboxes and start putting mail in there. And, that's what he does. That's his job. It's going to be a little weird if he goes to the elevator and goes up, because the postal mail guys generally don't deliver packages to your door, right? Now, but a UPS guy doing that might be okay. So it's not that we want to say no one shall ever walk through this door, but it's kind of normal if the UPS guy does it, but if the mailman does it, that's a little weird. And if he's actually trying to get into an apartment now, that's red flag. We're going to block that immediately. The trick is, this is what I was talking about, is the training portion. Your antivirus, your next-gen antivirus needs to know, okay, this is the mailman, this is the UPS guy, him doing this, that's okay. Him trying to do this, that's a little weird. Him trying to do this, that's totally off the charts, not allowed. So, and that process takes time.
Yeah, and then has to know how to tackle it.
Yeah, exactly. If he's not that big, you just tackle him.
Right.
I'm going to just
so let's
interject here. And one of the things that I think some of my panelists here also missed, I mean, I agree with everything they've said, layered security, firewall, antivirus, content filtering, and all the rest. One of the biggest things that we can do to protect ourselves is to make sure that we're staying on top of things like security updates, but not just at the operating system level, but also things like applications and firmware on devices across the board, not just with our PCs, but any technology that we're using that isn't necessarily a PC. So, for example, alarm systems that are based on a network or on a network, or maybe an HVAC system that's on a network. Any device that connects to the network should be looked at and ensure that it is kept up to date with security updates from the vendors.
Yes, which is awesome.
Definitely.
When vendors release things and don't release patches for them. Thanks, Android.
excellent. Any final thoughts on this question, or do we want to move on to the next one?
I think we'd get too caught up if we actually kept on talking about this one, because we probably could all day.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the next one we're going to lead off with, and the next question we have is, how will state-sponsored hacking play a part in 2017? Does anybody want to start that one?
Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it.
Sure, why not? Sure, let's go for it. I think the reason that thing is so prevalent right now is it's about what everybody sees. It's about what's in the news and what's top of mind. And so obviously the election thing, I mean, we already alluded to it earlier. I think you even mentioned it about state-sponsored hacking into the DNC. It's in the limelight right now, and it's a big deal because of a big activity going on in our country, in the U.S., for those of us in the U.S. Sorry, Brian. But anyway, but the thing is, it's been going on for forever. I mean, Stuxnet is supposedly, most people think, Israeli and American malware that was developed that was deployed in Iran to stop or to cripple their nuclear arms platform, basically where they were basically developing their nuke equipment. But I mean, that goes all the way back to 2010. So I mean, that's 7 years old now. So this, I mean, it's been going on. It's going to continue to go on. And yes, as technology advances, I think we're going to see more and more of it. Will we see more of it this year than we saw last? Probably not in the news and not in the media, because we don't have another election cycle. But I would say we probably had as much going on. Well, I don't know. That's probably a dumb assumption to make, that we had as much going on last year as we did the year before. But there's probably going to be a lot of it going on that nobody's ever going to know about, unless you're, the ones doing it. But yeah, just because it happened in the DNC doesn't mean it was the first and only time it happened. It's been going on for quite a while. That's my take.
Fantastic. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? If not, we can move to another topic.
Wow, I got that one right for everybody.
I just don't know that any of us are willing to dip our toes into that one, Kevin.
I don't want to be on record for that one.
Yeah, there's not a lot of extra to add to that.
I just quoted Wikipedia.
Well.
Yeah, well, I just
That's
quoted
quite
Wikipedia,
all right.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So the next one we'll go to is, so this will relate to a previous question. Are all brands the same? What makes them better or worse than competitors? So feel free to spotlight your favorites, some that you're not so keen on that you work with here. Let's start with Tim. Tim, we haven't heard from you in a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for handing me this one. It's almost as bad as handing me the state-sponsored one. Okay. So I think that a lot of the brands are the same. Now I'm not talking consumer versus commercial. Let's take let's take firewalls as an example. And Peter, please close your ears on this one. If I say Sophos, if I say SonicWall, if I say Meraki, Cisco, I'm pretty much. They all are very, very similar. They offer a lot of the similar offerings. One month or one series, Sophos might be better. Another series that comes out, SonicWall, may jump a little bit ahead of them. The key here is to choose a good commercially viable brand and to have multiple layers. Like an example, what we use right now is we're a SonicWall shop, and we use SonicWall as our commercial-based firewall. We use WebRoot as our antivirus, but we back that up with with Malwarebytes Professional for both the Malwarebytes product and the anti-exploit. Because again, we're talking, we've got signature-based antivirus, we've got heuristic-based scanning, we've got, a UTM firewall that again is regularly updated with their firmware, and a reputable company, Dell, is releasing regular updates for it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it matters a little bit less on brand than it does on multiple layers with multiple brands.
I would add to that, though, it also depends on the person implementing it.
That's true.
Because you can buy a SonicWall, you can buy a Sophos, you can buy a Cisco, roll it out of the box, turn it on, and you're wide open. It takes someone with knowledge on how to, even WebRoot, even any of this antivirus you can buy off the internet for $50 for a year. It takes someone to know how to configure that stuff or to make it work. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Kevin, I agree 100% with what you're saying. I didn't take that factor into it. What I was trying to say is one brand from the other is less important as multiple layers, and like you said, implemented by a very, I guess, trusted, but a knowledgeable, MSP.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to look at, again, to reiterate what Tim was saying, is less about brand, but also more about making sure that the product you're using is a commercial product, not intended for a residential use. The free antiviruses that you have on your home computer, they're fine and dandy, but those are more their test beds for the commercial business or the commercial side of their business. Not only is it not allowed to install most free products on your corporate network, but it's also not as secure. So keeping it on the commercial side, and you get what you pay for at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Anybody else, or we can move on to the next topic?
Microsoft. Apple is wonderful.
All right, so we'll move on to the next one then. Next question: do you see an increase in phishing, or more specifically, spear phishing, happening in 2017?
I work way too much to go fishing.
I do. I'm definitely seeing more phishing attacks, and they're just. I think this is somewhat in response to the technical controls getting stronger. So phishing relies, mostly on the weakest link, which is the person between the chair and the computer there. So yeah, we are seeing more phishing already this year than we had at this time last year. It's definitely going to be more, and that just moves the shift to user awareness and education.
I mean, I agree. I mean, because really it's always going to come down to that human factor of the training, what's going on. Do they understand? Does this great email that tells me that I'm going to win $1 million, click this link, does that really make sense to go ahead and click that link? And as long as the people are involved with being able to decide what they're allowed to click on and what they're not allowed to click on, the phishing attacks are going to continue. It's the easiest way to get in. I mean, after all, what you're after is a valid login password combination instead of sitting around trying to hack into it. It'd be much easier to have somebody tell you what the password is.
Well, and beyond that, what you have to look at is it's a numbers game for these people. I mean, you send out 200 emails and you get 1%, it's just, it's a numbers game. And they're going to keep doing it until they're no longer able to get the information.
It's marketing. It's all marketing.
One of the things that I've seen more of an increase in is specifically the spear phishing. So not only they used to send blanket, messages to 200 people. Now they're researching companies specifically and emailing the individual who is responsible for accounting at a business, for example, with the person's name, and they've done their homework and they now include the signature of the president. So they're really going after specific targeted individuals to try to fool them into thinking that this is a legitimate email coming from their president asking for a wire transfer or asking them to install something on their computer. And I think that's a little bit more dangerous than just the blanket ones, the emails that have been going out. The very specific individual being targeted. It looks legitimate and it looks real, and that's something to make sure that we train our users on.
Absolutely. We saw about 3 or 4 people get those ACH, hey, I'm the CEO or I'm the executive director of a nonprofit, directly to their CFO, their accounting personnel, their bookkeeper. And in one instance, we had someone actually transfer money. They called it in time to be able to cancel the transfer, but they actually did transfer quite a bit of cash. And and so that's why we've got to, as you mentioned earlier, Peter, we've got to be doing education. There are products out today that that we leverage, in fact, that actually send sample phishing and spear phishing emails to our clients. And if they engage in those, those fake emails that are coming from the system we use, we get notifications, so we know who needs the training and what would have slipped through the cracks. And I think that's the things that you're going to have to see from from a company standpoint, from a technology company or IT department standpoint. It's going to be more training and then testing and verifying whether or not people actually are trained and catch it. But let's face it, we all have bad days. There are going to be the days when the light bulb doesn't go off and you send the transfer. But that should not be the norm, and it's going to take education to make that the.
Well, and I still don't think that, we talk about this every day, and I still don't think that it's being talked about enough. Just the general public, they're still so unaware, and they just keep falling into the trap because they've never heard of it before. And they don't believe us when we say we need to give them education. I try to give my education away free to my customers and even non-customers. If you're not a customer of mine, you want to take my tests for recognizing spear phishing, I want you to take that. And I want you to learn it, but can't give it away.
Well, it's like on our side, we enroll all of our clients on it. We just started rolling it out last November. So every person at a client, they get put on an email series, and fortunately, we've not had people unsubscribe yet, but we basically send off weekly little short tips on, what's a good password, what's spear phishing, what do I do with this email? But those are clients, so we're allowed to email them. But yeah, it's just not talked about enough.
It's not a side job. Side.
No, it's not a side job.
Not like that ransomware as a service.
Kevin Lander's nonprofit on security.
There you go.
Maybe we should charge a tuition for this training. Maybe that'll help get people.
Absolutely.
There you go.
That's right. If you pay for it, then there you go.
Exactly.
We see that a lot too. We were having a discussion internally about how we want to promote security awareness at the hospital, and one of the things that I recommended against saying all of the great things like, look at all these bad email scams that we've stopped. Look at all these viruses that we caught. Look at all these dropped packets coming from China, because my fear is it's going to give our users a false sense of security. And they're going to say, look, we've got IT security. You guys have everything taken care of. I can do anything I want. And I got to tell you, unless you have a really, really, really locked down system, you can't just go do anything you want. So I mean, without danger. Obviously, if your system is really, really locked down, there's a lot you're not going to be able to do. But we find that that's generally not the case, and most systems are really wide open.
Well, Peter, you nailed it. I've had clients that they said, well, we know that your antivirus is on here, so I just go wherever I want because I figure you're going to block it if it's bad.
Yep.
And by the way, could you turn off the pop-ups? It's really annoying when I'm browsing this site and it's telling me that there are viruses on the site. And this is a doctor, so this is an intelligent man. And I'm like, no, that means don't go there.
and I have had that same one of my clients is an accountant. I have told him repeatedly, antivirus is not enough. Now, I didn't say antivirus is dead. I have told him you need a firewall, you need a web content filter, you need this. And he got a new computer, and he said, yeah, I want to make sure that one of your techs can install the antivirus on there soon before I start surfing the web, because I don't feel safe unless I do that. Like, yeah, that's great. But did you hear anything I said? Obviously, the answer is no. So, yeah.
So I think that's a great segue into our next question here. So here, I'll read a little stat for us, and then we can discuss it. So according to a study by Verizon in 2016, 63% of all security breaches involved a weak or stolen password as a method of computer or network breach. What do you suggest as a precaution to preventing weak passwords?
You can. There's two things that you can do to prevent a network from having weak passwords. Well, there's many more things, but two primary things. One is to ensure that the network is configured in a way that it forces them to have a complicated password. But more importantly is to make sure that they're not using the same password all over the web and all over other websites, because any network admin from any websites could typically see your password in plain text. And most of the time you're using your email address and your password to log in. And if you're using your email, the same password as you did on their website for your email, they now have access to your email and everything in it. And the second thing you can do is to have some sort of two-factor authentication. So something that you have either like a key or a one-time password in conjunction with your other passwords. So that would be my suggestion.
My number one suggestion is if you're sitting in front of your computer and on your monitor is a Post-it note that says password on it, get rid of it. I can't tell you how many offices I go into and I'm like, well, I'm going to need your current password. I'm like, oh, okay, it's right there. And it's posted, right? Password is, when they've crossed off all the ones that they've used before. That's my number one solution, is train people to not put it on a Post-it note.
Also, don't stick it to the underside of your keyboard. We know that trick.
Hackers know to look there.
I would say the biggest thing that I did for my personal security, and we've implemented this in our business, is to use a password manager that's highly encrypted, highly secure, but it allows me to keep a strong, and my password is very strong password. I think it is actually literally very strong password. Just kidding. But it is a long, complicated whatever.
I used to know,
but that one, there you go. But that one password lets me into the vault in order to access passwords for all these other sites. It'll randomly create passwords for me.
Agreed.
I literally, unless it's my master password, I do not know the password to log into any of the other stuff I use right now. So
same here.
So that would be one recommendation. So everything is unique, and a good one will run reports for you and tell you, if you got passwords that are duplicated.
Yep.
I'd like to say my wife doesn't. Yeah, I'd like to say my wife has that same policy, but I described her earlier.
So if you are already and absolutely, using strong passwords and using password managers are great. Using two-factor authentication is awesome. And just so you know, if your bank has you go to a website and says, what's your username and what's your password, And also, what's this favorite picture of yours? Or also, what is your PIN? Like a personal identification number. That is not two-factor authentication. That is something and something else It's two things authentication, but it's not two factors. So if you have something like a Google Authenticator app or an RSA token, that is a second factor, or something like a thumbprint or a retina scanner. Those are second factors. But password managers now, they're great. They're certainly an improvement over not using them, but they're not enough anymore, because we are seeing more and more that credentials are left cached in memory on operating systems, on running machines. So Tim goes to log on to his desktop, he punches in his username and password, and then say he locks the computer and walks away. Attacker then triggers the virus or walks up to the machine, gets physical access to the machine, and can lift his credentials out of memory. So one of the things that we've been working on recently is a solution we're using CyberArk in one case, and it changes the passwords. It's a password vault, so it's all the same stuff that a password manager does, but as soon as you use it, it can be configured to change the password on the client system. And there are, for higher security installations, and guys, if you're targeting mostly small businesses, it's probably going to be a long time before they can afford this. You can actually set up proxies in between your user and the system that they're trying to connect to. So you want access to that server, that's great. You can talk to this server here, which will then broker a connection to that server over there. Doesn't really make sense for small businesses yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see somebody virtualizing something like that, I'd say before 2020, that can be affordable. But essentially something that takes the next step and not only manages your password, not only stores your passwords for you, but manages them and dynamically changes them. That's the next step that we're taking to combat password cracking and lifting.
Well, we're using that in our company now. And believe it or not, the size of company we are and the way that they've done their licensing, it doesn't cost us anything to use it. And it's on-premise. It's meaning it's in our data center. It's not hosted by somebody else. And it'll let you do those things. I mean, not only just rotating your workstation passwords or third-party passwords, but your firewall passwords, network switch passwords, those sort of things. But so yeah, the only caveat to that is right now, as you described, it is expensive in some scenarios, and probably in all scenarios, it's complicated to set up. At least it is with what we're using. You really need to know what you're doing in order to set it up and not lock yourself out of things. Might be a bad thing if you did, but anyway.
Fantastic. So we're just coming towards the end now, everybody. But what I'd love to have is we'll go around the horn and get your final 30 seconds on thoughts on everything we've discussed today and what people should be looking at as their next step. So I'm going to pass it over to Tim first. Tim, take it away. And then when you're done, pass it back to me.
Okay. I guess the takeaway that I want everyone to be looking at as they close off from this, from my perspective, is that security and the need for it is not going to go away. It's just going to become larger. And you need, in my mind, two things. One, some type of expert who's a trusted advisor, who can be there by your side saying, hey, you're a doctor, you're an attorney, you're a CPA, you have your skill set, and we have our skill set of the technology standpoint. And I'm not trying to sell anything here or anything like that. I'm just saying, whoever it is, get a trusted advisor and have that trusted advisor help set things up, keep it up to date, and very importantly, employee education. And that trusted advisor should be assisting in that employee education. That's what I want you to take away.
Excellent. Let's hear next from Kevin.
Two things come to mind. One is talking about passwords again real quick. Everybody hates passwords. I've never heard anyone, sound thrilled about the idea that they have to change their password at their corporate headquarters every 2 months or every month or whatever. No one ever likes them. I'm in tech and I don't like them, and so if anyone should love them, it should be me. But I think the takeaway on the password thing is you really need to embrace passwords and embrace the fact that they're there to keep you safe and to keep you secure. As an end user, also as a company, they're there for safety. That's why we have them. So I think one thing I would do would be to encourage you to embrace them and look at them in that light. The second thing, we haven't really gotten into it, but Bill and I were talking before we got on the call. One other thing would be everything is going toward the cloud these days. Everybody's using Google for this, Microsoft for that, Amazon for something else. Do your due diligence and look into these things. Everything that we talked about today, I would encourage you to do due diligence and look into. But especially doing stuff in the cloud where you or your technical company that's, your IT company that's supporting you may not have any control over. Just because they've got a big name, a big brand, as we talked about earlier, don't just assume that they have their stuff in order and have you, first and foremost in their thoughts and are taking care of you. They have budgets, they have bottom lines they have to take care of, and some of these things don't come with backups. Some of these things don't take care of your data. It's still on you to do that. So do your due diligence in picking anything. If it's your trusted advisor, which should not be your uncle's cousin's nephew's sister who's in middle school, and picking the brands that they're going to support you with. You need to put the effort in and figure out whether it really is for you.
Fantastic. Next, we'll throw it to Adam.
Okay. I'm going to agree with Tim, and I would say that you need to surround yourself with experts. You need to have an expert IT company that's working with you. And I think it's fair to ask them questions. And I don't mean like, well, how are you backing up the server, or how are you doing? But ask them the questions of, okay, what are you doing? What should I be concerned about? What would you recommend? Listen to the recommendations of your expert and not just throw them away without asking the why. Why do I care? Why? Okay. And then education. Education is the most important thing for the end users, and then your disaster recovery and continuity plan. You've got to have that in place, because everything that we described, there are smart people out there writing these attacks and these viruses. And your last ditch, when they've gone through everything that you put in place, or you have users that or clients that don't want to take your advice, you got to have the solid backup. You got to have a way to recover their servers, whether it's a cloud server or whether it's a physical server, and not just if the office goes down, you need to know who your ISP is. What's my account numbers, things like that are all IT related, to get your business back up and running. That's all I have.
Fantastic. Next, we'll go to Bill.
I think everyone's hitting on a lot of the same topics here. Definitely it's the education, making sure that your employees are educated on what to expect, what not to expect, what are the behaviors that are normal. And again, it's about that layer. Do you have a backup system that you can recover quickly from? Do you have a firewall that's effectively looking at these things, doing an intrusion protection and making sure that things aren't getting in that aren't supposed to? So it's all of that stuff put together, and making sure that you have the professional that knows how it works and designs it for your business. The financial industry is different than the medical industry. So hire a professional that understands your industry that you're in. And with the education piece too, realize that the attacks here are really after financial gain. So when you receive an unsolicited email of, hey, Chase Bank needs to have you log in here, it's probably not Chase Bank. Another thing to remember too, this stuff is always changing. They're creative in how they come up with this stuff. So don't get, content that everything's okay. And it's, we've got it covered today. Because tomorrow it's going to be a different attack that you have to worry about, which ties into my final comment, which is realize that this is not a set it once and forget it. Somebody needs to be monitoring it and making sure that it's updated and making sure that new technology is introduced to protect you from the new threats.
Excellent. So next we're going to go to Brian, and just keep in mind, Brian, we do have only about a minute left, so we need to split that between you and Peter. So take it away.
All right. The most important thing that I'd like people to take away is to take cybersecurity seriously and do something about it in 2017. Most entrepreneurs take their business seriously, and the criminals, they take their business seriously. And don't be fooled. These type of crimes are a business, and they make a lot of money in it. So just one final point, and that's on the end user education. We talked a lot about teaching people and making sure they're educated on the cyber front, but it's also important to teach them about making sure that anybody physically entering their premises is supposed to be there and not just trying to get in. We've had situations where our technicians came in and just started working on somebody's stuff and nobody even questioned them. And it was a new employee. So watch out for that kind of thing. Thank you.
Excellent. Peter, final 30 seconds.
I can't sum it up better. You guys hit all the points I wanted to make. So,
And that says something from Peter.
You're my marketing department now, guys. You're my marketing department.
Fantastic. Well,
No,
I'll
that
wrap it
says
up here.
something. It says something, all right. It says that it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you to do my job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is the Peter we know.
That is.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate everybody who sat through it all today, and thank you so much to all our presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you all.